Sukhihotu and very good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. I'm Brother Gan, your MC for the Dhamma talk this morning. Kindly switch off your handphone or put it in your silent mode from now till the end of the Dhamma talk. Thank you. Dear brothers and sisters, let us now pay our respect to the three jewels by kneeling and bowing 3 times. Buddham Vandami. Dhammam Vandami. Sangham Vandami. Please be seated. Brothers and sisters, this morning we are very fortunate to have with us a very renowned Dhamma speaker, none other than Professor Dato Seri Dr. Victor Wee, who is no stranger in the Buddhist circles and in the tourism industry. Let me give a profile of Professor Dato Seri. Professor Dato Seri holds a degree in economics from the University of Malaya, Master of Arts in Sociology from Brown University, USA, and a Ph.D. in economics from Bristol University, UK. He was a senior economist in EPU of the Prime Minister Department and former Secretary of the Ministry of Tourism. He has served as Chairman of Tourism Malaysia and Chairman of the Program Committee of United Nations World Tourism Organization. Currently, he is a professor at the School of Hospitality, Tourism, and Culinary Arts of Taylor's University at Bandar, Sunway. In terms of Buddhist association, Professor Dato Seri is the president of the Buddhist Gem Fellowship, BJ, and he is also the chairman of Sakyamuni Buddha Foundation. He is a regular Dhamma speaker, conducts Metta meditation, and has spoken at numerous Buddhist conferences. He is an accomplished musician and has composed many English Buddhist hymns and has recorded 5 albums with the Buddhist hymns group Wayfarers. He has also authored or co-authored 3 Buddhist publications, namely Buddhist Hymns, Buddhist Puja, and Buddhism and Modern Society. This morning, Professor Dato Seri will speak on the topic, the last 100 days of the Buddha. It's going to be a very interesting talk, which details the events that led up to the Buddha's Parinibbana. Let us put our palms together and invite Professor Dato Seri Dr. Victor Wee to comment this talk. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Hello, good morning. Well, thank you very much, Brother Gan, for the introduction. And I must say that I'm very happy to be here in Kinrara Metta Buddhist Society. I see that you got the word Metta written right across your chest on your t-shirt. And I myself have been leading Metta for 21 years in the BGF. Every Wednesday we meet for Metta. It started during the financial crisis in 1997, and it's still going on. It's incredible. We meet once every week, and for a Metta group to go on for about 21 years, I think now, it's quite incredible. All right, so it's good to be a place where everybody practices Metta. All right, now I just wanted to, this talk was actually prepared. I gave this talk actually in BGF in preparation for a pilgrimage that I was leading some years ago. I just wanted to find out how many of you have gone on pilgrimage. Can you please put up your hands? pilgrimage, Buddhist pilgrimage in India? Okay, so many of you have not been to pilgrimage before. I think you should make an attempt at least once to go to the holy places. And I think when you go, there are two kinds of approaches. Some people would just like to go to Bodh Gaya and come back, or go to Lumbini and come back, and that takes about 7 days. But if you're going there for 7 days, and if you divide the plane fare by 7, you find that it tends to be quite expensive, because, you know, the fare to fly back and forth, you have to divide it by the number of days. But the normal pilgrimage to do the complete route will take about 14 days. Yeah, 14 days. If you can, you should try to do that. This morning I will talk about the last days of the Buddha. That is tracing his journey all the way until he passed away at his Mahaparinibbana at Kinrara. Okay? So, all right. Well, we are very used to see a picture like this. The Buddha lying on his right side with monks around and Buddha passing away in Parinibbana. Now, first of all, after the enlightenment of the Buddha at the age of 35, he taught for 45 years in the Gangetic Plain. So although he came from the foothills of the Himalayas in Nepal, he spent most of his time really on the plains of Ganges. If you were to go to India, of course the best time to travel in India would be the cold season. You know, in India there are 3 seasons, not 4 seasons, but 3 seasons. Malaysia, how many seasons do you have? We got 4 seasons. You got hot, you got very hot, wet and very wet. Well, in India you got 3 seasons. You have what you call the cold season, that is about October to February, and that is followed by the hot season. All right. Then after the hot season is really hot. About this time it will be the hot season. And it will be followed by the rainy season. In the rainy season, about 80% of the rain that is received by India will fall within these 3 months. So you keep on raining, and if you dry clothes, your clothes also cannot get dried. Yeah? So there are basically 3 seasons. So the Buddha spent, after his enlightenment at the age of 35, he spent 45 years in the Gangetic Plain. In these days we call it Uttar Pradesh. Uttar means Uttara, north. The northern province, Uttara Pradesh, and Bihar. Bihar comes from the word Vihara. When Buddhism was at its peak, in the state of Bihar, there were many, many Viharas. And people who want to go for spiritual development will migrate and will move over to Bihar. Of course, over time, Buddhism was completely lost, was completely uprooted from the land of its birth in about the 12th century. It faced a disaster because of the nomadic attacks from the north. And these people were out to destroy Buddhism. They uprooted the temples, they killed the monks. So without the teachers and all that, the followers were all being pushed and became outcasts in the Indian caste system. So that happened to the Buddhists. It was very, very sad. And Buddhism was completely uprooted, and there were hardly anybody practicing Buddhism then. But the Buddha taught for 45 years. And he traveled throughout the whole subcontinent, the northern part, expounding the Dhamma, except during the Vasa season where the monks will go on retreat because it rains so much. So the monks will stay put at a certain place in order to do their practice. This is just very briefly the first 5 years of his mission. At Varanasi, or it is actually Saranath. Saranath is about 8 miles away from Varanasi. And he went there looking for 5 companions. After getting enlightenment, he was thinking, who can actually benefit from these teachings that I have? The Dhamma was so profound. If I were to teach to anybody, it would just pass through their head without making any impact. So he thought that the 5 disciples, 5 companions that were striving with him when he was practicing on Uravela, will probably be suitable. So he went looking for them. And if you go to India, you know that the distance is very, very long. From Bodh Gaya all the way to Varanasi. And Saranath was very close to Varanasi. It's a kind of a protected sanctuary for deer. It's called the Deer Park. And he found the 5 monks and taught them the first sermon and the second sermon, and also that was during the rainy season. And after teaching the 5 monks, there was this young man by the name of Yasa, who was very rich, but who was disappointed and who gave up. He didn't want the kind of luxurious life that he was leading. And when he met the Buddha, he decided to be a monk. And 54 other companions joined him, Yasa and companions. So together with the 5 monks, during the rain retreat, there were 60 of them. At the end of the rain retreat, the Buddha sent them out in order to bring the good word about the teachings of the Buddha. So they went in different directions. They're all arahants. And the Buddha, after that, returned to Rajagaha. Rajagaha was a very big kingdom. If you go to India, Rajagaha is an important stop. It's the kingdom of Bimbisara. King Bimbisara actually met him when he was an ascetic. He came in as an ascetic, and then he went into the city and saw that there were goats and sheep being sent to the city for a great sacrifice. And what he did was that he actually, according to the tradition, he actually stopped the ceremony of animal sacrifice. And apparently King Bimbisara was very, looking from this palace, he was very impressed with this young monk who had a very noble bearing, unlike the other wandering mendicants or ascetics that you see. So Bimbisara actually offered him half a kingdom. But he says, no, king, I cannot take your offer because I'm now looking for truth. And when I come back, after I found the truth, I promise to come back and teach you. So after the Buddha came back, after he gained enlightenment, after teaching the 60 disciples, he decided to go to Rajagaha. Actually, he went to Uruvela back to Uruvela where he was practicing. Uruvela, there are 3 famous brothers. They're called the Kassapa brothers. The eldest of the Kassapa, the Uruvela Kassapa, has 500 disciples. The second brother has 300 disciples. The third brother has 200 disciples. So amongst the Kassapa brothers, they got 1,000 disciples. So that is a lot, right? People following. But they were very proud practitioners, and they were fire worshippers. Now, apparently, this Uruvela Kassapa has got a cave, and people who want to sleep in the cave, the next day, when the sun rises, they will be dead. Simply because in the cave at night, a serpent will come out and will bite anybody who sleeps in the cave. So this young, enlightened Buddha, he was about 35, he asked for permission to stay in the chamber. And Uruvela Kassapa said, oh my goodness, this is a fine young man. Sure enough, he wants to sleep in the chamber. Next day, he won't be alive. But the Buddha slept in the chamber. Next day, the serpent was subdued. And the Kassapa brothers were very shocked to see that he was still alive. And because they were fire worshippers, the Buddha talked about the fire sermon, that everything is burning. Our eyes, our sensations, the kind of attachment that we have from our eyes, from our ears, from all our senses, is all burning, is all on fire. And then all of them became disciples of the Buddha. And could you imagine the Buddha going from Uruvela back over to Rajagaha to meet King Bimbisara? King Bimbisara heard the news that there was this young monk who became the Buddha. And he knew that this is the monk that he met before, that he offered half his kingdom. So he actually rode on his chariot. It's about 14 kilometers from the city of Rajagaha, and met up with the Buddha, surrounded by his retinues of monks. And amongst them were the 3 Kassapa brothers who looks older than the Buddha. So the king didn't know whom to bow. So the eldest of the Kassapa brothers bowed to the Buddha and said that this is my teacher. So that giving the signal to the king that the Buddha, who is only 35 years old, how many of you are around 35 years old? All above, huh? So you could imagine somebody who is young, 35, who is actually the enlightened Buddha. Yeah, and then the King Bimbisara accompanied the Buddha back to Rajagaha. Now, very recently, about a few years ago, the Nalanda Mahavihara in India decided to do some research, and they identified the path that the Buddha took. This is called the Jetian path, Jetian. And I happened to be there in India, so they put me on the stage to make some speeches. The opening of this path that pilgrims can actually take if they want. They can walk through the villages from this village into Rajagaha. Okay, so that was where King Bimbisara became his disciple. and also offered him the bamboo grove, a place where he can have a retreat and stay with the monks. And they built some shelter for them as well. It was also in Rajagaha that he met up with Sariputra and Moggallana. This was his two chief disciples. Sariputra and Moggallana were great friends. They had not only been friends in that life, but also in previous life. Sariputra was actually didn't meet the Buddha directly. He met one of the 5 monks that his name was Asaji. And Asaji was, his face was glowing like the full moon because he was an arahant. He came into the city and Dana to collect for food for Dana. And Sariputra was really surprised about how he looked like, and he was very inspired. So he met up with Asaji and said, Venerable, can you please tell me some teachings because I'm really impressed with the way you carry yourself. I would like to know something of what you teach. And Asaji is like some people who cannot speak very much. They have a lot of things in their mind, but they cannot express it so much. They say, I'm a man of few words. I can hardly give you the teachings. Reverend Sariputta said, don't worry, don't have to give me much. A little bit also okay. What is it that your teacher teaches? He says, my teacher said, everything arises, all phenomena arises from causes. My teacher explained how they arise and how they cease. That's what the Tathagata teach. And just with those words, Sariputta attained the first stage of sainthood. Suddenly it's like being struck by a thunderbolt, and he became the first stage of sainthood. And because of that, he brought his friend Moggallana and went to the Buddha, and both of them became arahants. Okay, so it was in Rajagaha. And while the Buddha was at Rajagaha, he received the invitation from King Suddhodana. The king misses his son. And this is like about 6-7 years already. And the king was getting old, and he says, I want to see my son again. Every emissary they sent to invite the Buddha, when they meet the Buddha, they listen to the Buddha, they decided to become monks. And they forget to convey the message of the king. Oh, that was terrible. So eventually the king decided to send the princess, when he was a prince, send his best friend. Ask him to invite him back home. So the best friend came in and spoke in very flowery terms, asking the Buddha to come back to Kapilavastu. And also became a monk, but he didn't forget his invitation. So the Buddha decided to go to Kapilavastu. And so the people who were ordained were all the Ananda, Anuruddha, Rahula. Also Upali. Upali was the Baba that shaved the head of the princess. There were 7 of them, including Devadatta. And he also wanted to become a monk. So when the Buddha ordained them, Upali was first in line. So actually, technically speaking, he was more senior than even Rahula and Devadatta and Anuruddha. And Upali was the one who actually was the one that recited the Vinaya during the first council, okay? And then the Buddha went off, and in Vaishali he heard his father was dying. So he went back, and he was at the father's side, telling the father about mindfulness, how to watch the breath and all that. And father attained the first stage of sainthood before he died. And then he decided to move away from Kapilavastu. But you remember his foster mother, also his auntie, who breastfed him. She had a boy of his own called Nanda. The boy was given to a wet nurse, but the auntie was the one that breastfed him when he was a baby. So she and Yashodhara and all that, the ladies in court, 500 of them, wanted to become nuns because they have also sat in and listened to the talk. They were inspired. But the Indian society, there is no way a woman can ever be a nun. There was no such thing at all. And even right up to today, the religious functions are all performed by men. Women do not perform such function. But these women all wanted to become nuns. So when they asked the Buddha the first time and the second time, the Buddha had to say no. because it was very dangerous in India for women to be alone without male companions and to be, to be nuns. So the Buddha says no. So then they decided that since the Buddha says no, let us follow the Buddha, follow him. So they walk all the way from Kapilavastu to Vaishali. And these are palace people. They're used to, the palace life. They walked barefooted. Their feet were all bleeding. They were tired. They were all dusty. And they were like so disappointed. How come the Buddha didn't grant them the permission? So since the Buddha approached the Buddha directly, the Buddha twice says no. For the third time, what they did was they went to Ananda. They spoke to Ananda. They said, please tell our master that we want to be nuns and all that. So Ananda approached the Buddha and says, is it true that women also can attain sainthood? And the Buddha says yes. And then Ananda spoke on the women's behalf. And because of that, the Buddha admitted all the palace women, they became nuns, but given some 8 additional rules on top of the normal Vinaya, so that there is no problem within the members of the Sangha. So Ananda actually very responsible for getting the Buddhist nuns. And it was unheard of. It is really against anything in India. They were breaking the traditions. But this happened in Vaishali. This was at Kapilavastu. Cremation of the king Mahapajapati requested to join the Sangha. Yeah? So together with the Sakyan is the father side, Kolia is the mother side. If you go to Nepal, you will understand what is Sakyan, what is Kolian. And you also visit a stupa, which is called the Ramagrama stupa, where 1/8 of the Buddhist relics is still inside the stupa. So the accounts of the last days of the Buddha was given in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta of the Digha Nikaya. The long discourse is Sutta number 16 in the Digha Nikaya. This is the longest sutra of the Pali Canon and gives details of the Buddha's passing away. He was 80 years old and he announced that he would pass away in 3 months' time, in 100 days. And at that time there was political unrest and war. And the Buddha set off on his final journey to Kushinara, where he passed away. His final meal was offered by Chunda, the smith, and he was cremated in Kushinara, and the relics was divided among 8 royal families and his supporters. So opening of the scene was in Rajagaha, the start of the sutra, Rajagaha. It was in Vulture's Peak. So if you go on a pilgrimage, surely you will go to Vulture's Peak. My advice to you is, now I've led pilgrimage many times, I know that the best time is before sunrise. You bring your torchlight and you do the trekking up to the Vulture's Peak, very peaceful, very beautiful, and do some meditation and puja before the crowd comes. So we always try to be the first on the Vulture's Peak. So the setting was in the Vulture's Peak, the Buddha was there, and at that time King Ajatasattu, who is now a supporter of the Buddha, after killing his father Bimbisara, he came back and supported the Buddha, Ajatasattu. He wanted to expand his territory by attacking the Vajjayans. Vajjayans is a republic, neighboring republic. They were chieftains, and amongst them they choose their leader, something like our Negeri Sembilan. You got 9 chieftains, and they choose one young Dipertua, something like that. So Vajjayans was like that. So King Ajatasattu wanted to attack them, and he sent his prime minister to see the Buddha, asking the Buddha for advice. Can we go and attack the Vajjayans and win a war, win a battle? What a thing to ask the Buddha. So the Prime Minister went to Vulture's Peak, paid respect to the Buddha, sat on one side, on the right side, and then asked the Buddha this question. And the Buddha did not answer the Prime Minister directly. The Buddha spoke to Ananda. He says, I heard that the Vajjayans have regular and frequent assemblies. Is that true? And he says, yes. I heard that they assemble and disperse peacefully. It's true. I heard that they attend to their affairs in harmony. I heard that they show respect towards the elders and so on. There's a long list of things that the Vajjayans do. And the Buddha says that as long as the Vajjayans behave in such a cohesive manner, they cannot be defeated. Okay? So they will not decline. So the Prime Minister heard all this, and after that he went back and advised King Ajatasattu accordingly, don't attack. And then the Buddha called the monks, and used the same principles to tell the monks that the monks should have regular and frequent assemblies, they should assemble and disperse peacefully, attend to their affairs in harmony, show respect to the elders, and so on. Also, in the same manner that you run, we have a Kinrara Metta group. We should also do all this in order to keep ourselves cohesive. Same thing, eh? Now, after this was reported to King Ajatasattu, King Ajatasattu has a plan. What to do is to break up the Vajrayans by putting some spice inside. They put in spice and chocho, you know, create trouble with this and so the Vajrayans started having arguments and fighting, started breaking up. And after 3 years later, he attacked the Vajrayans and completely took over. Yeah. But later on, from Rajagaha, they expanded, and the capital was later on moved to Pataliputra, where Ashoka became the emperor. And then Ashoka was actually from this entire line. It started during the time of Ajatasattu. Yeah? And Ashoka, as you know, had a very big empire. So from Rajagaha, the Buddha decided to go to Nalanda. Nalanda was the birthplace of Sariputta. There are some interesting stories about that. And also to Patalagama or Pataliputra or Patna. These are all different names. Current day is called Patna. Buddha's time is called Patalagama. During Ashoka's time is called Pataliputra. And each time when the Buddha goes, there will be lay devotees. And the Buddha's instructions to the lay devotees is always quite simple. Talking about, that he says that the immoral man will encounter 5 perils: great loss of wealth, through heedlessness, evil reputation, timid and trouble in every assembly, die in confusion, and rebirth in an unhappy state. Whereas a righteous man who practices virtue will increase his wealth through diligence, will have a favorable reputation, confident in any assembly, serene and peaceful death, and rebirth in the heavenly world. So advice to lay people is like that. It doesn't ask you to practice meditation and all that. Those are the instructions given to the monks. But these days, the lay people are more ambitious. We read the sutras given to the monks and we practice like monks also sometimes. And that is actually very good because that's the way that we can keep our sasana strong. Huh? But the advice I give to the lay people is very simple. Practice morality, practice your sila, practice your dana, like that. And then the Buddha moved on to Vaishali and stayed in Ambapali's grove. And this is where the Buddha advised the monk how to practice mindfulness. Ambapali at that time was a big trading center at the crossroads. Now the city is much, much smaller because it was inundated by floods and all that. And the Ratana Sutta that you have chanted was actually taught or recited at Vaishali because they had plague there. And the Buddha was invited to do some chanting to clear the plague. And Ratana Sutta was so effective. When the Buddha was there, chanted, they had a storm that washed away all the dead bodies. There were many dead bodies on the streets. So the whole city was cleansed with the rain because they had drought for a long time, and that's the cause of the plague. And so the whole city was cleansed after the Buddha was there. So that was the city of Vaishali. In Vaishali, there was this courtesan by the name of Ambapali. They call her the mango girl. Because in India, females are not popular. So sometimes when they're born, they're just abandoned. So she was abandoned as a baby under a mango tree. And a prince found her and raised her. And by the time she became a teenager, 15, 16 years old, she was so beautiful. She was so beautiful that all the men started having a lot of attention for her. And men were wanting to fight for the benefit to be with her. So the Ambapali decided to be a courtesan so that she became available to those who can pay money. And King Bimbisara was also one of them who paid money to have the pleasure to be with her, Ambapali. So she was very, very beautiful, right? And when she heard that the Buddha has arrived in Vaishali, she rode on a chariot and straight away invited the Buddha for dana, lunch dana, which the Buddha accepted. You see, the Buddha does not discriminate, even if a person is a courtesan. Courtesan is like a public servant. You serve the public, something like that. But they had to go through all the skills, like so many arts, 24 different arts, including the art of self-defense. Just in case the client gets a bit naughty, then you need to do self-defense. Okay. So she invited the Buddha for lunch, and the Buddha accepted. And when she was riding back the chariot, there were the Lachivis. The Lachivis are all the young nobles, and they got their faces painted in colors. They were dressed in very flashy colors. They were riding the chariots. And as they were riding the chariot, they were saying, where is this Ambapali going to? How come she looks so happy? So they stop her chariot and say, hey, Ambapali, why are you riding like that? He says, I went over and met up with the Buddha and invited him for dana, lunch dana, and the Buddha, the Blessed One, accepted. They say, what? What? We are going to invite the Buddha. How can you beat us to it? Hey, Ambapali, let me tell you this. We give you this gold in exchange for can we shift the appointment? We want the pleasure of inviting the Buddha. Ambapali said, no way, no way. So they were snapping their fingers. They were very unhappy. And so they rode their chariots to see the Buddha, and the Buddha says, no, he has already accepted the invitation for Ambapali. So the young men were all very disappointed that the Buddha could not accept their dana because Ambapali has offered. Ambapali later on became a nun. She also offered the Buddha a mango grove. She became a nun and also became an arahant. All right? So it became very accomplished. And in her poem, in her reflection, she was reflecting about how she was when she was young. She said, this hair was silky and black and all that. Now it's like coconut husk. So going through different parts of the body that people think, oh, the body is so beautiful. But now what happened when you get old? Okay? That was the reflection. Then after that, the Buddha, Baluva is quite close to Vishali. This is all around the vicinity. This is a rainy season. So the Buddha spends his rains at Baluva village near Vishali. And here the Buddha was attacked by severe sickness as if he was about to die. And the Buddha endured the pain mindfully, thinking that, I should not pass into Nibbana without addressing my followers and taking leave of the monks. Let me suppress this illness by strength of will and resolve to maintain the life process and live on. So although the Buddha was attacked by the severe illness, almost to the point of death, the Buddha could actually stop himself from dying. He says, no, I cannot pass away now. I need to have some word for the monks first. So he stopped that whole process. Yes, thank you. So his illness subsided. And when he recovered, Ananda came. Ananda said, oh, Blessed One, I was so worried when I see you in that condition. I thought you're going to pass away. I was so scared. But I was comforted by the fact that you will not pass away until you have spoken to the monks. So I know that you're not going to pass away. So the Buddha says, Ananda, what do people expect of me? I've been teaching the Dhamma without holding back anything. I've not held back anything. Now I'm 80 years old, and my body has only comfort when I go into meditation. So the whole body is giving him so much trouble. So maybe this was because he went through 6 years of ascetic practices where he pushed the body to the limit when he was young. And now when he's old, the body is giving him so much trouble. Only peace that he has from the body is when he goes into samadhi, into meditation. 80 years old. So it's not, so it's not so easy for him to continue. At another time, he was having alms in Vishali. He went to the Chapala shrine in Vishali with Ananda. And he mentioned to Ananda, he says, Ananda, whoever has developed and brought to perfection the 4 roads to psychic power, he could live for a century or the remainder of one. The Tathagata has developed this power, and if wish, can remain for a century or for the remainder of one. So the Buddha says that because he has developed this psychic power, he can actually extend his lifespan. Now that was a strong hint. But Ananda did not take the hint. And he didn't request the Buddha to live on. After the third hint, the Buddha had to repeat it 3 times. 3 times Ananda didn't listen. Maybe his mind was something else, thinking about appointments, things like that, so busy. He didn't get the hint that the Buddha was giving the hint that the Buddha has attained the 4 psychic powers and the Buddha is able to extend his life. And Ananda also knows the Buddha was getting very old. And after that, the Buddha gave permission for Ananda to leave. So Ananda left the Buddha, and the Buddha was alone. And at that time, Mara, the evil one, came to the Buddha and asked the Buddha, Blessed One, this is the time for you to enter into Parinibbana. Actually, Mara invited the Buddha to pass away after the Buddha gained enlightenment. But the Buddha says no, because he wanted to establish the paths for the different roads to sainthood. So now, the Mara says, now Blessed One, you have trained monks, you have trained nuns, you have trained disciples who are all accomplished. So there's no reason that is holding you back from passing away. So Mara wants him to pass away. So the Buddha said to Mara, Mara, you don't have to worry. 3 months from now, the Blessed One will take final Nibbana. So the Buddha made the prediction. And when the Buddha spoke those words, the whole earth trembled. And then Ananda came running. Ananda says, oh, Blessed One, there was an earthquake. Earth trembled. And then the Buddha said to Ananda what he told Mara. And Ananda said, oh no, Blessed One, surely you cannot pass away in 3 months' time. Oh no, that's too soon. Oh, Blessed One, please, I plead you, please don't leave us. And it was too late. The Buddha says, now I'm frail, Ananda, old age, far gone in years. This is my 80th year, and my life is spent. Even as an old cart is held together with much difficulty, like you use various ropes to tie the bone shaker cart, the body of the Tathagata keeps going on only with supports. And when the Buddha says, well, Ananda, you were not listening. I've given you all the hints. And since there was no request, so I have actually made the prediction of passing away in 100 days' time. And once the Tathagata has given a prediction like that, he will not retract, he will not change. So it was too late. It was too late. So now the Ananda was already like crying already. And he asked whether the Buddha had any last instructions for the Sangha. The Buddha says, Ananda, be islands unto yourself. Refuge unto yourself. Seek no external refuge. Take the Dhamma as your island. Take the Dhamma as your refuge. And have no other refuge. Okay? So these are some famous words spoken by the Buddha. Seeing the Buddha's impending death, Ananda appealed to him to remain until the end of the world period. That means until for his lifespan. Could be like 120 years. But the Buddha refused, saying that he has hinted several times previously. Not only 3 times, so many times the Buddha hinted to Ananda. Ananda was not listening. If only he could... saying that he hinted several times previously that he could stay if asked by the Buddha, but if asked by Ananda, but he has not responded. Now it's just too late. Ananda, have I not taught from the very beginning that with all that is dear and beloved, there must be change, separation, and severance of that which is born, come into being, is compounded and subject to decay? How can one say, may it not come to dissolution? That cannot be such a state of things. And of that Ananda, which the Tathagata has finished with, that which he has relinquished, given up, abandoned, and rejected, that is his will to live on. The Tathagata's words once spoken, has been spoken once for all. Before long, the